Hello and welcome to Castle for One Games. I am George Castle and today I'll be covering an Automa tutorial from the solo mode Sankore. Published by Osprey Games. Designed by Fabio Lapiano and Mandela Fernandez Grandon. And as usual, beautiful art by Ian O'Toole. This is a 1 to 4 player game, but today I'll be providing a tutorial of the AI, which is a simulated opponent, one of the great scholars of Timbuktu, fighting to outperform your school, so that it can become the most prestigious in Mecca. So, let's learn. Welcome to Western Saudi Arabia, where you will be competing to bring your school and the university to worldwide renown. We will be teaching students using their knowledge to advance through classes using resources, books, and a lot of analysis paralysis as you level up your student until they graduate, using your prestige to grow your reputation as the best master teacher of all knowledge, or something like that. Now, although this is a tutorial, there may be some rules that may need further clarification, but the intent of this video is to get you started and increase your overall knowledge of how to manage this AI. Alright, let's start with the setup of the AI board. The game comes with 4 player boards, one for each color. White, yellow, red, and blue. Unfortunately, I didn't see any symbols to distinguish the boards for colorblind players. However, for the solo mode, when you flip the board over, each board indicates the AI difficulty level, and they are clearly defined by the number of headgear. From level 1 being the easiest, through level 4 being the most difficult. And the main difference between these levels is the amount of books that the scholar will contribute towards the library, making more aggressive scoring opportunities for itself. In my example, there are 2 headgears, so this is the medium difficulty level. And the scholar is Khatib Musa. This board came from the red player, so I've chosen the scholar to also be red. The color of choice is, of course, optional. Alright, the scholar will receive the crowns, the mosques, the trading posts, and the walls. It will not receive any of the resources, including the favor tile, as it never receives or needs any favors throughout the game. It will not receive a resource board. It will, however, start with his camel. So just place it on Timbuktu of the Astronomy area. It will not receive any of the introductory classes. Shuffle the objective cards and draw 4. And place the cards face down for the AI next to the board. After setting up the advanced class market, it is time for the draft. Place 4 students on top of the lowest level advanced class tiles. Make sure the students match the discipline type of that tile. Then place a book token for each color into the cloth bag. Draw the books to randomly assign them to each of these advanced class tiles. Make sure that the book tokens do not match the advanced class tile. If it does, just move on to the next tile and place it there. Now that you have that set up, you get to draft the tile with the student book combination of your choice. Then the AI will also choose which combination it will draft. In this case, draw the top card from the remaining objective cards, and the advanced discipline shown at the bottom left corner of the card is the discipline that the AI will draft, matching the advanced class tile. If that tile is already taken, then you will match the book color that matches that discipline instead. Place the chosen book next to the AI board and place the chosen student in the cloth bag to be drawn later in the game. Finally, place the chosen advanced class tile on the center space of the AI board without a letter. And that's the AI board setup. Now, return the undrafted books back to the supply and the student back to the box. Make sure to refill the advanced class tiles that were just taken. The player board and the main board are set up as the 2-player setup. And that's it. No changes, so let's just go straight to explaining how the AI turns work. Alright, the AI turns are divided into phases, and they are identified by a number in each of the hourglass icons. 1, 2, and 3. Phase 1 has 4 turns. Each turn is divided by consecutive letters. A, B, C, and D. Every time it's the AI's turn, you simply flip one of the 4 objective cards that we drew earlier during setup. The icons at the bottom left corner of each of the cards is the current discipline. In this case, Theology. So place it next to slot A. And all actions for the AI will be associated with the current discipline. Now there may be times where the AI will have to choose another discipline type, but we will talk more about that later in the video. We will then perform the AI's first turn action sequence, which are identified by the icons on the board that pertain to this slot. Some have 2 actions, and other boards may only have 1 action, like this one. Then the AI will move on to teach a class action, which will happen as his last action for each of his turns. This is where he will place most of his pieces out onto the board. But we will go through each of those actions later on this video. We continue through each of his turns by laying 1 card at a time until all 4 slots have been placed. Once the AI has completed its 4th and final turn, it will move to the second phase. Now, nothing happens in between each phase, you simply pick up where you left off. At the end of the first phase, the AI will end up with 5 students that he picked up along the way. And that's because he started with 1 from the draft and 4 from each of his turns, and placed each of them into the cloth bag. So during the second phase, he will be drawing the students from the cloth bag and placing them on each of these spaces of this row. Again, each one represents a turn. This time, it will start to add advanced tiles from the market to each space of his board pertaining to the letter the student was placed on that row. So by now, he should end up with a total of 7 students at the end of this second phase, since he would have picked up another 2 from these 2 action spots. Then we move on to the third phase, and he will end up placing each student drawn from the bag for each of these spaces on the final row, following the same sequence of actions. First, he does the action from the board, then the teach a class action, every time it's his turn. Once he places his final student on the last space of this row, the game ends. You will not have a turn after that. Just a reminder that the AI does not spend anything, even the supported class spaces. Everything is free for him. And that's how the AI turns work from an overview perspective. Now let's move on to the actions. Alright, it's time to go through each of the actions during the first phase of the scholar's turns. We begin by flipping over the top card from the AI's 4 objective cards, and we'll place it on slot A of his board. That means the first action from this slot indicates that the AI wants to enroll a student that matches the color of the current discipline, which in this case is mathematics, or it would be a teal colored student. And we know this is the type of action because the green background is over the students and not the area, in which we'll talk about later on this video. Okay, now he always takes the student furthest to the right of each of the cues. It doesn't care which area the student comes from. It could come from the law area, the mathematics area, the theology area, or the astronomy area. In this particular example, the astronomy area cue has a teal student, or a student studying mathematics. So he would select this one. Now, if let's say that there were mathematics students in multiple cues, say for both astronomy and the mathematics area, it references the symbol found in the upper left corner of his board, following the arrows in an anti-clockwise direction. And because we start with the current discipline area, he would take this one instead. And if none of the cues had a mathematics student in the first space, then we'll look for the second space of each cue and continue on until one is found. In this case, we have one here in astronomy and one here in theology. So which one do we pick? Again, we look at the anti-clockwise direction symbol. We start with the current discipline, which again is mathematics, and we see that the next one in priority is law. But we know there isn't one there. So we move on to the next one, which is astronomy. And since there is one there, we pick this one. And if we ever remove anything from the second space or beyond, we need to make sure to refill that gap by moving the student from the right. And remember, the AI does not receive any of the favor rewards at the bottom of the cues. but he does get the double-sided prestige token reward, following normal rules. He still triggers the overflow prestige token and all the majority scoring conditions at the end of his turn. But in our example, we did find one in the astronomy queue, so all we have to do is place it in the cloth bag. Remember, it already has its starting student in the cloth bag, which he got during draft. So he should end up with 2 students in the bag by now. And the next action that shows on this board shows that he wants to contribute a book to the library. Which book? Well, it will depend on the current discipline, and in this case, mathematics. So we'll just grab one from the supply, since he only uses the books he's collected when they run out of the supply. And we will place it in a space that will get him closest to having a 2-book lead of the current book discipline. But since all of them are empty, in other words, there's a tie, he just places it at the very top. If there were 3 astronomy books at the top, and 2 law and 1 theology in the middle, he would place it in the empty row because it would take him 5 math books to have a 2-book lead on the top row, and 4 math books to get a 2-book lead in the middle row, whereas the bottom row, it would only take 2 math books. Now, if there were 3 math and 1 law book in the top row, 1 math and 2 theology in the middle row, and 3 astronomy and 1 math book in the bottom, he would place it in the middle row, since he would only need 3 more math books to have a 2-book lead there. Besides, he already has a 2-book lead on the top, and it would take 4 math books to have a 2-book lead in the bottom row, and so on. It is now time for him to take a teach a class action. And because the current discipline is mathematics, we will be placing a wall piece from his board to the mathematics area. But first we need to count how many knowledge points he has accumulated. As you can see, he doesn't have any on his board for the mathematics area, so he will only be able to depend on the shared knowledge from this queue. And because I already took a student from an earlier turn, he now has a +2 knowledge to play from. So he has 2 options where he can place that wall. Either at the bottom row, which means he would have majority, or he could place it in the top row. So he would prefer to take the top row because he will not only take the majority, but takes the majority away from me. He now gets to flip only 1 Sankore tile over that is closest to him. And now when we do majority scoring, he'll be the one to gain that book. But he doesn't gain any rewards from it or any gold from this column. Instead, he is closer to owning that prestige tile at the end of the game. In my next example, let's say he now has 7 total knowledge, 3 from his board, and 4 from the shared knowledge. He already has the majority in all other areas of the madrasa except for the left side column. And because he always wants to use the maximum knowledge points he has, he will place his next wall piece in this D scoring area. This means he now qualifies for the supported class bonus. And remember, anything with a double student requirement is considered, for the purposes of the AI, a bonus move. He also doesn't have to pay for the book cost. And as part of this bonus move, he gets to flip more than just 1 Sankore tile. He gets to flip as many Sankore tiles from his row as there are Sankore tiles showing the prestige side from any other row. And the above row has the most exposed, with 3 Sankore tiles with the prestige side showing. Now these could have also been the double-sided Sankore tiles as well, but either way he will flip that many on his row. Of course, if he only had 2, he would flip that full amount. The row above is just a reference on his maximum Sankore tiles he is allowed to flip. Now there is one more thing to consider. Even if he has the opportunity to place his wall on space 7 and get all those Sankore tiles from the supported class bonus, he would still prefer to use a lower knowledge point if he has the opportunity to block your lead, like he does here, even though he will lose out on all those possible Sankore tiles. He is very spiteful. Alright, I have fast forwarded to the end of the AI's 4th turn. It is now the end of phase 1, and we are getting ready to enter phase 2. So he should have 5 students in the cloth bag by now. And we will no longer need the objective cards. They basically just stay next to each of the slots as a reference. Because remember, he will score as if he had completed all of those objective cards, which means he already has 4 prestige tokens he will be able to count towards the end of the game scoring. Alright, from now on for phase 2, we will start to draw the students from the cloth bag, one turn at a time, and we will place them on top of this row, starting with the letter A and working your way through letter E, which means you will end up with 5 turns by the end of this phase. In my first example, we're already into his 4th turn of phase 2, and we will cover the action for him to establish an advanced class. That's what this banner symbol means on this space with a letter. So we will draw the next color student. In this case, Theology is now our current discipline. He will place it on the letter D space of this row. This means he will add an advanced class tile to the matching letter space, here, letter D, which matches letter D of the space. Now, this space tells you which row he will remove the advanced class tile from the tile market. In this case, it will be a Theology class, the second row from the top. So this one. Now we move to perform the next action on the board here. The next action will be to enroll a student by area. It is also identified by the green background on the lower half of this icon. Basically, the AI will remove any type of student from the area of the current discipline. In this case, the Theology queue. He no longer cares what type of student it is. In this case, he will take this last mathematics student, which means he will trigger the overflow and place the prestige tile on the law area, matching the current region it was taken from, in this case, Theology. And he will also trigger the majority scoring at the end of his turn. And because this student was added based on the action on the board, he will place it on top of this recently acquired tile. Just like we did on space C, here. This means that by the end of phase 2, the AI will end up with 7 students in the bag. The AI will now perform the teach a class action, but this time using Theology, since that is the current discipline. And in my example, he has a total of 7 knowledge, 1 from his board, and 6 from the shared knowledge queue. And since he likes to use all of his knowledge, he has 2 choices, either section A or section B. Since he already has a lead in section C, and for section D, there is no knowledge space 7. So we will place it here in section A, because it's in alphabetical order. He will now get to take this Sankore tile to the madrasa. He won't get any bonus from the Sankore tile. However, he would gain a prestige token if it was a double-sided prestige tile like this one, which are typically awarded from the queue spaces here or the graduation spaces here. He now qualifies for a supported class bonus, since the top row of any region requires a supported class. Again, he doesn't need to meet the requirement or pay any cost. He simply gets to take the action. In this case, the class bonus allows him to receive a prestige token from the supply matching that region's discipline. In this case, a Theology prestige token. Only we get the skill tile as a bonus. Or place one of the students from our board to the special Theology spaces found in the Sankore Madrasa area. Majority scoring works the same way as in regular 2-player mode. The AI will receive all the books of any spaces he has won the majority in. In this case, he will gain this one and this one. We will not get any since he blocked our majority. And remember, even if we were tied, it's whoever has the highest knowledge space that breaks that tie. I have now fast-forwarded the game to the end of the last turn of phase 3. By now, there should be 7 students on his board. And they all go back in the bag, getting ready for phase 3. And every time it's his turn, we will draw 1 from the bag and place them on the 3rd row, starting from the leftmost space and working your way to the last space on the right, for a total of 7 turns. Alright, I have fast-forwarded the game to his 2nd turn of phase 3, and the current discipline is law. This icon means he will gain a prestige from the supply. And if there were no law prestige tokens left, then he will reference the next discipline in the anti-clockwise icon here. In this case, it would be an Astronomy prestige token, but lucky for him, there are still law tokens available. Alright, and for his final action of this turn, it is time for him to take a teach a class action. And because the current discipline is law, he will teach a law class. He currently has a total of 7 knowledge, 2 from his board, and 5 from the shared knowledge. So let's go ahead and get a crown from his board. Now he would obviously go for the spaces where he can spend the most knowledge. In other words, a space 7. In either of these 2 top regions, since either one would also allow him to collect any overflow. However, because I'm leading in this area, he would prefer to place it in this space 7 to block my lead. He would also get to take this Sankore tile to be placed in the madrasa area. Now let's go through another scenario. Let's say there were items on 2 overflow areas and the AI already had the lead on both these areas below. He could use the alphabet priority to decide which of the 2. In this case, it would be the law region here. But because the astronomy region has the most prestige tokens, he would much rather get more prestige from this area. And that's how the law area works. It is now back to the AI, and he removes a blue student. The first action is to contribute a book to the library. We remove an astronomy book from the supply since the current discipline is astronomy. It looks like it would require 4 books to get a 2-book lead for both the top and the bottom row. And he would only need 1 more astronomy book to take the lead in this row. So he will place it here. Next, we will perform the graduate a student action. And basically, you will just choose the graduation tile matching the leftmost student on this row. In this case, it is a mathematics student. So we will pick the highest scoring graduation tile from this column. And we will place it on top of the AI board into these grooves. Then we'll place the student on top of it. If that was the last graduation tile of that column, then the AI will receive a double-sided prestige tile and place it in the madrasa. He would also gain that matching prestige token immediately. If the madrasa was full, like it is here, then he would keep the tile in his personal supply, and he would count it as a prestige token at the end of the game for scoring purposes, and still receive a matching prestige token immediately. His last action for this turn is to teach a class with the current discipline of astronomy. In this case, he has 3 knowledge from his trading post, and 6 from this shared knowledge queue, for a total of 9 knowledge value spaces. Let's see where he can gain majority. He already has the majority in region A and in region B. And it would make sense for him to start from Timbuktu, since he has more options from his current spot to take the lead from me. Now he could stay on region D, since it only requires 5 knowledge to get to the port city of Swakin, and it would also give him a supported class bonus. However, he wouldn't take the lead from me since I already have the highest flag value in the port city of Zila with 14, and the highest flag value in the port city of Swakin is 13. So his next focus is going to be to take away the lead from me in region C. He has a couple of ways to do it. He could backtrack and go through this route to Alexandria. That's exactly 9 knowledge spaces away. However, Alexandria's highest flag value is 12. And I see Cairo offers a higher value than that with 13. Since he has exactly 9 knowledge spaces from his current spot, he can go either this way or he can go this way. So he will take this Cairo spot and he wins that region. Unless, of course, I can get another trading post somewhere in this area later on. We now fast forward to his final turn. We draw his last student. And it's another astronomy for the current discipline. We will perform the first action from this icon, which means he will place a Sankore tile. He removes the double-sided prestige tile that matches the current discipline, along with a matching prestige token from the general supply. He keeps the prestige token on his personal supply and places the prestige tile on the madrasa. He will now perform a teach a class action, which would be in the astronomy area. But I've already gone over that, so we'll just act like he already took that turn. It is now the end of the 16th turn. If the madrasa is not full, you will continue to place the double-sided prestige tiles matching the current discipline. In this case, Astronomy. And if you run out of those tiles from this current discipline, follow the arrows from this anti-clockwise icon. In this case, it would be Theology, and you would place those instead. Once the last space is filled, which is space 12, the game is over and you don't get to play one last turn. If the madrasa was already full any time before he starts his 16th turn, and you were the one who triggered it, then the scholar gets one last turn. So there may be some games where he doesn't get to complete all his turns. And now we move on to the end of the game. Before we move on to the final scoring, we first make sure to resolve all the remaining majority scorings. In this case, we still have the law area that has not been resolved. The AI will receive this prestige token and this one. And I get this one. We now move on to assigning the Sankore Madrasa prestige. And this works the same as in multiplayer. You basically check to see who has the majority walls connected to each flipped Sankore tiles on the prestige side. And that person, or in this case, the AI, will receive them to be counted at the end of the game, as if he had the prestige tokens. We will now need to determine the prestige token values. Don't forget that the discipline that has the most books on each row will get a 2-point multiplier. In this case, the top row, Mathematics, would get the 2-point multiplier. And Theology would get a 1-point multiplier. And in the second row, Astronomy would get the 2, and Theology would get 1. And finally, on the bottom row, Theology would get 2, and the Law would get 1. For final scoring, I like to use the score sheet that was created by Muir, found on BGG, and I'll make sure to post a link in the show notes below. But that's it for me. Until our next board game adventure, hope you had a great time with this one.